What's up, everybody? Welcome back to NBA Talking here with Raj, Jordan, Henry, and joining us once again, Dom is here. I was not here with Dom last time, so it's good to be able to talk NBA with you, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I can't complain. Like I said, it's nice for you to be here this time, so we can all commingle and just talk ball. So let's do
so
it.
you don't gotta listen to Jordan rant for 30 minutes at a time. You need somebody to cut him off here. So we do have a lot to talk about though. So let's just get straight into it. And obviously the hot news that we're coming off of, which our almost an entire episode was dedicated to last time, was the Harden trade. He went and made his debut with Brooklyn. Has played a couple games there now under the Nets, and quite frankly, he's looked pretty good. The Nets have had 2 wins, one very, very big win against the Bucks as well. But Harden, doing stuff in his first couple games with a triple-double, 30-point triple-double. I don't think anybody's ever done that in a debut with their new team. Followed it up with another 30-point, 10-assist game, 10-plus assist game. Just really, really good stuff from Harden here. I know it's a small sample size, but people seem to like what they're seeing. Harden is obviously playing the point guard right now. We haven't seen him fit with Kyrie. Kyrie is supposed to make his return tonight. So we'll see how that shakes out, but I imagine that they're going to move forward with Harden at the point guard. He's been talking like he's going to be playing the point guard position. So Dom, I'm going to toss it to you here, and I want to get your thoughts on the trade as a whole, because you obviously weren't on last time's episode, but then I want to kind of get your thoughts on what you've seen out of Harden and the Nets in these first couple games here.
Okay. So actually going back to the last time I was on the show, one of the things that I talked about was I didn't feel like this was a trade that the Nets needed to make. I actually liked the Nets team, the way they were constructed as a whole before this trade, better than I do them now. I was one of the people who thought that James Harden was a better fit for the 76ers, and he would have been better in Philadelphia. But as far as the trade goes, I think the Nets gave up a lot of depth, and they're going to need these guys to put up they're going to have to play big minutes, and they're going to have to figure this system out. Defensively, they're still a liability all around, because this Nets team wasn't playing great defense before he got there, and James Harden isn't necessarily a defensive stopper at all. So at the end of the day, you have probably the best big 3 in the league right now. So the aspiration is championship or bust for the Nets. You need to at least make it out of the Eastern Conference. So a lot of pressure there. As far as Harden and his performance so far, I think he's been as good as advertised. Like you said, triple-double in his debut, followed up with another 30-point game. I do think it's a good move having him be the point guard. I think that he's a little bit better of a facilitator. And it's funny, like, people look at him as someone who's kind of a ball hog, but, like, since being in Houston, he's kind of been a guy who's consistently averaged, like, 8 assists or more a game. So he's a good facilitator, and I like him running the point guard position. I think Kyrie Irving actually is better suited to be a 2 guard than a point guard, because I think he's just so ball dominant, and so much of his game is isolation scoring. So I think it's better that Kyrie Irving is in a situation where he's kind of just being used as a weapon instead of being asked to kind of be an overall team player. And then Kevin Durant will get his points and do what he does, because he's so unselfish and he's great and just getting his own into his own rhythm as far as just like the flow of the game. So it can work. I'm excited to see how they look with Kyrie Irving tonight. I feel like that's a really big point. But as far as everything goes right now, I think you can't be mad at the trade. I mean, James Harden, like I said, has been good as advertised. So
Yeah, everything that you mentioned is kind of the conversations that we had, like, before the trade actually happened, whether or not it was going to work out, and then sort of carrying into like this week, having seen him play now, and the talk about whether Kyrie will switch into the 2 guard. And I feel, to what you're saying, he certainly is the kind of point guard that can play off ball, because he's a good shooter. I mean, you saw Chris Paul playing off ball with James Harden at the point, so like it's not like it hasn't been done. And to what you're saying about James Harden being a facilitator, he's really, really an impressive playmaker when he wants to be, and he does like to shoot the ball a lot, but he will, similar to KD, get his points in the rhythm of the game, and that's what we've seen in these first few showings with him there in Brooklyn. Henry, what have you thought about Harden's look here in the first 2 games?
He looks a lot more happy. I think we can all agree on that. He's a lot more live on Twitter, which is pretty funny, because someone's like, "Oh, did he just get Wi-Fi all of a sudden now?" But it just goes to show, he's in a. I think all players deserve to, ultimately have their happiness in the league, and that's going to come with winning and being in the right place. It's a lot of people didn't like the way his era in Houston ended, but you know what, it ended. It's done. It's time to move on. I think Harden has showed how well he can just play alongside another superstar. I mean, I know him and Kevin Durant have experienced together back in Oklahoma. But the thing is even Harden, he had a quote the other day saying that back then they were just kids, honestly, or like that was his own words. Like they were very young and still had a lot of things to learn. Now in this stage in their career, I think they're going to be well equipped to be so focused and so ready for anything to come their way because they have the experience, they have the pedigree, they have the accolades now that really established them as a very deadly duo. We all know that. But individually, Harden has been playing amazing, 30 plus points, 12 plus assists in his first 2 games. And I agree with Dom. I think having him at the point guard position would really, I think it will be the best for the Nets because Kyrie is more of a shoot first type of point guard instead of a pass first type of point guard. And Harden, he can do either or. He led the league in assists not too long ago also. So having Kyrie back, I want to see the dynamic of, just where the ball goes, ball rotation and just the rotation of players itself, because I was looking at the depth of the Nets and they kind of are lacking depth aside from their superstars. So I want to make sure to see if, Steve Nash has the right rotations in place to keep up with the entirety of the 48 minutes. But I think James Harden is playing exceptional basketball. He's back to his old self really because he looked kind of dead back in Houston, at least in his last few games. But yeah, just as a Celtics fan, a little scared, but it just goes to show that the East is a lot stronger now than what it was, in the past 5-6 years. So, Jordan, what are your thoughts as a perennial, Mr. Back-to-back champions? Are you scared?
I guess my role here tonight is going to be kind of bringing everybody back down to earth a little bit because I know we're all excited about James Harden, and I'm not the biggest James Harden fan, but obviously they looked very good in the first couple of games. They got a big win against the Bucks the other night, which was you could say that could potentially be an Eastern Conference Finals preview. It was definitely a heavyweight fight. Both of those teams were trading shots back and forth literally until the end of the game, and that was pretty cool to see. And that just makes for better basketball around the league. My hesitation with saying that the Nets are the favorite to come out of the East or something of that nature is kind of twofold. One, it's threefold. There's three things. One, James Harden. He is playing very well, obviously, and it's no surprise that he jumps to a new team after mailing it in these first couple of weeks, and now is all of a sudden playing his best basketball. To me, the analogy is when you're dating somebody in high school and then you break up and you go to somebody else, and you get to the new girl and you're like, "Hey, listen, I know I've been a bad boyfriend in the past, but I promise, I've changed. I'm going to be good. I'm going to do all these nice things," and you do, and you show that behavior for a couple of weeks. And then after a couple of weeks, you fall back into the same habits. And so that's my concern is yes, everything's going to be great and peachy right now because he wants to look good for not just himself, but he wants to look good in front of the whole league and say, "Hey, look, I'm still one of the best players in this league. I want to fit in." But I wonder if down the stretch, end of the regular season, 50 games from now, playoffs, if he doesn't revert back to the dribbling for 20 seconds and doing his own thing and, making it the James Harden show. That's question one. Question two is Kyrie. Undoubtedly talented, great ISO scorer, able to hit big shots in the playoffs. I trust him in that regard. However, you're now telling him that he has to share the ball even more, even though it's, I'm sure somebody he's friends with in James Harden, but he has to share the ball even more. I don't know if he's going to commit to going, playing off the ball if they do move Harden to the point guard and kind of have him take over the play initiating duties. So that's kind of a concern there. Again, it may work for a little bit. I'm sure they're going to do well tonight. I have no worries. I'm sure you're going to see all three of them get 25 plus points.
That's just because they're playing the Cavs.
I wasn't going to say that. I was going to let you say that. But I think it's going to look good for a couple of weeks. But again, same thing. Are we going to fall into this habit? If they're down 3 with 20 seconds left in the playoffs, we all know here in the show that Kevin Durant should get the ball, but I don't think James Harden and Kyrie know that. And I wonder if that could cause some issues and some kind of disjointedness for the Nets moving forward. And then the last thing is, if they do run into the Bucks, if they run into the Sixers, and if they get far enough, and if the Lakers, knock on wood, can make it again, if they run into the Lakers, who is going to guard Giannis full time? Who's going to guard Joel Embiid full time? And who's going to guard Anthony Davis full time? They have nobody to do that. Trading Jarrett Allen to Cleveland in that 14 deal was kind of an underrated move for them in the fact that they lose that extra depth because let's be honest, DeAndre Jordan has not been himself for a couple of years now. He doesn't look he's not super athletic. He's not, been great on ball on the defense. And, I'm concerned that you'd have to play him, 30, 35 minutes a game to match up with the guys that I just mentioned. And that's not good for, Brooklyn. So those are kind of my three big questions. Yes, you're going to see it look great for a couple weeks here at Brooklyn, but I think as we get towards the end of the season, the playoffs, that's when I'm really, interested to see how that group is going to come together and how they're going to be able to play off of each other if they are in fact able to do so.
Yeah, a couple thoughts there. First, is that analogy that are you drawn from personal experience there on the dating analogy? Is that where you're getting that from?
I know.
No. If you go to any high school or college setting,
no. But in all seriousness, I mean, Dom said at the top, and then you just brought up there, the depth thing certainly does pose some issues for Brooklyn, and it is that Jared Allen lost because DeAndre Jordan is a solid defender, but and I'm actually not even so concerned about the Giannis and LeBron because KD is a good defender and he can handle those guys as well as most other guys in the league can. It's when it comes to those second options on those teams, whether it be Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton or AD in LA, like that's where the issues come up because Harden is not going to play defense, Kyrie's not going to play defense, DeAndre Jordan can handle some of these guys to a certain extent, but not to the level that I think they need him to. And Spencer Dinwiddie not being there, he gives him a lot of length at the wing. That does certainly pose some issues for this Brooklyn team. But on the offensive end, yeah, I mean, like I don't really have any doubts about that team, being a successful offensive team as long as they can rein all the egos in. And we are basing this on the sample size of 2 games without Kyrie. So there's just so much sort of wiggle room in terms of what we'll be discussing in the weeks to come as to how that team looks in the future. But right now, like Harden, at the point guard position just seems like such a perfect fit for that team because he's going to attack the basket. It opens up space for KD, Joe Harris, for those guys to get their shots outside. He's had so many beautiful assists to DeAndre Jordan down low where DeAndre can just slam it next to the basket. He draws all the defenders from the inside to him. DeAndre Jordan is wide open right next to the basket. I saw that so many times against Milwaukee. And Brook Lopez is not the most athletic defender, but I think he's a pretty respectable defender, especially for the kind of player that he is. So you have that against one of the better defensive teams in the league, like the Bucks. It is sort of, to the analogy that you made, Jordan, we see it all the time, when a new coach comes in, when a new player comes in, you see the team winning games, and that's just the success that happens there at the beginning, and there is still a long road left in this season. So we're going to have to certainly draw on what's to come here for this Nets team, but if they can continue what they're doing now and then just slot Kyrie as sort of an off-ball shooter where sometimes if they need to make a possession or if KD goes to the bench and they need 2 sort of ball handlers on the court, that team will have a lot of success with James Harden at the point guard position. It's just a matter of if it'll actually get done, I think.
I agree with that. I think that's like a good point for me to also like acknowledge is that I think Nash is going to split them up a lot, like where they're not all 3 of them. Like all 3 of them are going to start the game together. They'll play the first 6 minutes, and then they probably won't play all 3 together until like the very end of quarters or the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, especially if it's a close game, obviously. So they are going to look great in a lot of stretches with just 2 of the 3 on the floor. It's just my concern is like, again, playoffs down 3 or 4 with a couple minutes to go. And Kyrie's like, hey, look, I've been here. I've hit big shots in the playoffs and the finals. KD's like, hey, look, I've been here. I've hit big shots in the finals and everything. And James Harden's like, hey, it's me, James Harden. The things that I just mentioned. So that's just my concern is, how that works out. But I mean, we're not going to know for, a couple months, obviously.
Yeah,
James Harden knows in clutch situations, he's not the one that's getting the ball.
I hope so too.
He better know that. He better know that. It's going to be either Kyrie or KD. I honestly think it will be Kyrie.
It should be KD. It really should be KD. Yeah.
Not that I don't trust Kyrie. Like if KD gets like doubled and he throws it to an open Kyrie, that's fine. But like KD should start it in the possession because he was making Middleton, who's all NBA defense in his own right. I think second team. He was making him just look foolish a couple times. And
it's that stupid back to the basket baseline move that nobody can guard because when he extends up, it's like 7'6", 7'7". How are you going to reach that? You're not going to block that. There's no chance.
And then he can pull you out on the perimeter. He does these these crossovers. I'm like, people that size can't do that. Like that's just not possible. Like this guy's an alien. Like we talk about Giannis being an alien. Giannis does not have that in his bag because Giannis doesn't have a jumper, which is another problem for the Bucks in its own right. But KD is. I'm glad to see it. It is cool to see like KD back like 100%. I think
he's averaging 30 points.
Basketball.
Yeah. My favorite part of that game watching KD was how much he went at Giannis. Like he was punking Giannis a lot of that game. And I feel like that was a big kind of like put on notice of Kevin Durant being like, hey, this is my conference, just to let you know. I'm the best player in this conference, and I'm letting you know it.
Yeah,
and I like
that's correct too. I don't think he's wrong.
There's a guy named Jason Tatum out there.
KD above Giannis at this point, because Giannis, like that last possession when they were down 2, even though they're only down 2, I had like zero confidence that Giannis was going to get the ball. I was like, how do you give it to him? Like, he's not going to shoot a jumper. There's not enough time for him to get to the rim. And if they were down 3, you might as well not even have Giannis on the floor at that point. Like, that's the Bucks have some concerns that they have to work out, and that's I commend Giannis for taking the 3-pointers. But he is shooting at this point
horrible.
Like we've said that already. I said that last year that I commended him as opposed to Ben Simmons, who doesn't shoot. At this point in his career, going into year 7 or 8, I think it's 8, he should be making a higher percentage. I mean, we still have like 1 or 2 air balls a week from him, and
not long before that final possession, he pulled up for a 3 from the top of the key, and it just went far left, and it was embarrassing. Honestly.
So that Milwaukee needs to not so subtly fix that before the postseason, but that's obviously a whole other topic.
Definitely. I think that's going to be a fun matchup, the Bucks and the Nets, especially if you see those guys meet in the playoffs. I think that'll be a really fun matchup if this game showed us anything. Let's go into the next topic and sort of an extension of this trade. Caris LeVert obviously dealt in this deal, went to the Indiana Pacers, and as part of the physical that happens with any sort of trade process, pretty much in any league, they found a sort of mass in Caris LeVert that they had to remove, and this is keeping him out indefinitely. And, this is obviously a sign for the Pacers, that Miles Turner is going to miss some time, I believe. He injured his hand recently. So the Pacers obviously losing some pieces here. But I think the biggest sort of talking point of this situation is the fact that the fact that they got this physical and that Caris LeVert was involved in this trade. He himself has said that it could have possibly saved his life because if they didn't catch this thing here at this early stage and they didn't remove it, like, who knows what could have happened and what could have internal damage it could have done to him. So obviously you just kind of, you're thankful that he was involved in this trade and just sort of the dominoes fell in a certain way that they did catch this thing. So I'll toss it to you, Henry, first. There's obviously the human side of it, but I also want to get your thoughts on, the Pacer situation and how they sort of handle and juggle this with, Sabonis being more or less the only star again that's still healthy there, losing a couple of those key assets. Is this sort of another bit of a wash season for Indiana?
Not washed. I wouldn't think, because the Pacers they've been able to show, at least for the past 4 or 5 years, that they're a very stable team and a very stable franchise. Even though they don't have a superstar on their roster, they have a well-rounded team. So I know Sabonis is going to be playing handicap with Miles Turner out. Caris LeVert was supposed to bring another type of tenacity and ball dominance, but obviously he's going to be out with his situation. But the Pacers organizations, they're very, how can I put this nicely, not like the Pistons, very competent. That if I can make one comparison, I think they'll be all right. I think they'll be able to hold their own, at least for a good portion of the regular season, until Miles Turner comes back, until Caris LeVert gets the okay to go back on the court. They'll be able to hold their own. At least that's what I think. Do you guys think, this might be a wash season for the Pacers, or do you think there's a lot more promise, coming later down the line in the regular season?
Yeah, Dom, what do you got on this one?
Well, first things first, again, like Caris LeVert said, this trade in a weird way almost saved his life. Like, this trade was actually ended up being a good thing for him, which kind of is like I said, that very rarely happens, but I'm happy that, they were able to find that. Hopefully he can come back and be healthy and move forward. Because I really like Caris LeVert. Like, as a player, I think he has some real true upside. And if he can be healthy, I think Indiana made a great move. Getting rid of Victor Oladipo, who openly said that he didn't want to be in Indiana anymore. And now you get someone who I think can be a face of a franchise, like, moving forward. That's the type of upside I think Caris LeVert has. As far as everything else with the Pacers, it kind of does feel like this season is a wash. And like I said, I think they're good enough to be competitive. Like, they'll make the playoffs, and I think they'll be good enough to maybe win a couple games in the first round, depending on who they go up against. But the Pacers kind of have – so Henry kind of said, they're stable, and that's one way of looking at it. I kind of see them as running in place. Like, it kind of feels like they're stuck in the mud, and this kind of happens with those teams that typically finish in a conference that are around, the 5th, 6th, 7th seed. It's like you're too good to get a really high draft pick or make movements to better your team in the draft, but you're not good enough to maybe attract free agents, or you're not good enough to really take a step forward to win a championship. And I feel like the Pacers have kind of been stuck in that spot for a couple of years now. I do think that when this team is healthy, they'll be much better. You know, obviously you get Miles Turner, you have Domantas Sabonis. I really like Malcolm Brogdon on this team. And then obviously if Caris LeVert can be healthy, I think the Pacers do have a nice squad around. And I think that, you know, moving forward, they can be better. But I do think it's all solely basically based off of Caris LeVert's health. If he's healthy, I have a lot of faith in this team. If not, then we'll see. But like I said, hoping that he's healthy. And if he is, I think the Pacers made a really good move. And I can see them taking some steps forward, like I said, when this team is healthy. But as of right now, with the way this team is and just so many pieces out, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I mean, those four guys that you mentioned, Brogdon, Turner, Caris LeVert, and Sabonis, like those guys theoretically should be a top 4 team in the East, but the health issues have obviously caused them problems in the past couple of seasons. We've talked a lot, actually, about the Pacers, like going back to the beginning of this thing, we were starting our sort of NBA return and whatnot, and whether or not like Sabonis could be the only guy in the bubble that could carry the Pacers through the playoffs and whatnot. I'm curious how you see this LeVert injury affecting that team.
Yeah, I mean, we like the Pacers here on the stream, right? I mean, there's no hate towards them. They always play hard, and seeing like TJ Warren emerge in the bubble last year was really cool for Indiana. But yeah, as far as the LeVert thing goes, definitely a blessing in disguise. Obviously, it turns out this trade was great for him twofold, right? Because he was always going to be the 3rd or 4th option on that Brooklyn team. And if somehow they kept him during the James Harden trade, he would have been, eating last at the table for them. And that's just doing a disservice to his ability. So I am glad that he was able to get out of there and hopefully get to a spot where he can get healthy and play a big role on an Indiana team. I think pick and roll of him and Sabonis would be, one of the better ones that we have in this league night to night. But first and foremost, obviously, it's great that they were able to find that mass. As sad as it is, I guess, to realize that, you do have something that could potentially be wrong with you. It's good that they caught it now as opposed to catching it at a time where, maybe things would look a little different for him health-wise. So hopefully he's able to get healthy and get back out on the court. He hits, I think, a very talented player. He did a lot of good things for Brooklyn last year in the bubble when they didn't have KD and Kyrie and those guys. And he was doing some good things this year when, those guys were sitting out for, rest and everything. So hopefully he can get back. He's on a great contract for him. I think it's like a 3-year, $45 million deal, which, again, it provides some security long-term. Which is different than Oladipo because Oladipo is going to be a free agent, excuse me. And yeah, if they can get everybody healthy, I think they're going to compete. The problem is that they don't have, they don't have a Kevin Durant, they don't have a Giannis, they don't have an Embiid. Like, and that's not necessarily their fault. The chips didn't fall for them in that way. But a lineup of, Brogdon, one of the holidays, Turner, Sabonis, LeVert, I mean, that's going to be competitive in a playoff series. So I hope that everybody gets back. I enjoy watching those guys play. I echo, what everyone else has said about Brogdon. He's phenomenal. Sabonis has been, a rock star to start this season. And, I hope that they're able to get everybody back healthy. And, I think if they do that, they are kind of stuck in that road. They don't have like a true superstar. So I can see them even, in the next 2-3 years, like their ceiling may only be a 4 or 5 seed because you have Philly, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and even Boston that are kind of jumping ahead of them, and Miami. Like, it's like, man, the East is a little bit more crowded up top than we realize. Mm-hmm. But they're still a fun team, and I still think they're going to be competitive. And if they play any of those teams in the series, like it's not a pushover.
Yeah, that was going to be sort of my follow-up question to that. And I know you guys throw out like 6-7 seed out there, but like not even just this Indiana team, but a team led by Sabonis, like Sabonis being the number one option on a team. What do you think the ceiling for a team like that? Because I imagine that he's still got a little bit of growth in him over the next few years. I could see him becoming one of those elite big guys in the league, but I don't know if he's quite there yet. And I do feel like the ceiling is like a 6 seed. And to go back to what Dom was saying, like if you're just teetering at that sort of 6, 7, whatever it may be, yeah, you're not good enough to get, or you're not bad enough to get a good enough draft pick, but you're not good enough to really make any noise. You're not going to draw any free agency. Indiana's already a small market as is, so free agents are already not really itching to go there. Do you guys see like maybe Sabonis taking that next step and becoming like a proper all-star? I know he was an all-star last year, but really solidifying himself as an all-star? Or do you kind of see them really just, getting stuck in the mud here? I'll open it to whoever wants to go for it.
I can see it. Absolutely. I think I like the pieces that they have. The only thing about Indiana currently that I don't like is I don't like the fact that they fired Nate McMillan.
I don't either.
I think Nate McMillan, like everyone everyone was always talking about, like, if you just look at what happened with guys who maybe, like, think about Malcolm Brogdon before he went to Indiana, and think about Victor Oladipo before he was in Indiana. Everyone, like, those guys went there and they immediately became like all-star caliber players. There's a reason for that. Nate McMillan, like, he is a phenomenal coach, and the fact that they fired him after really for no reason, like, what was that team supposed to do in the bubble? I mean, I guess you're upset that they got swept, but it's like you ran into.
Well, they had just signed him to that extension too. It was just ridiculous, ridiculous situation.
So I think that with the talent there, yes, I don't know if Domantas Sabonis being the number one option is the best option. Like I said, I'm high on Caris LeVert. So if he is healthy and he's the number one option, and then you have Sabonis maybe as your number two, I think this team can compete. But like I said, they have some growing to do. And that's the thing. They still are a fairly like young team. Their pieces are fairly young. So they've still got some growth to do. We can see a lot of development. I just think that Nate McMillan was really great at developing talent, and losing him, I think, is a really big piece. I think that's something that's going to come back around to bite them, but we'll see.
Jordan or Henry, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Dom, like, do you think, I like that you brought up that that topic with Nate McMillan, because I agree too, like, they got rid of him way too quick. That's been one of the trends I can see now in the NBA, that I think front offices are kind of acting too impulsively sooner rather than later now. And if you look back in the league, like, yeah, the league is ever growing, ever changing and stuff. But back then, I don't remember front offices acting this impulsively, where like there shows promise, but not, if it's not an immediate championship contender, then you're out of the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
And like that's what happened with the Clippers, like they got rid of Doc Rivers for Tyler. Like it's just, I don't like the direction of front offices in the NBA, and I don't like what happened with the Pacers. I don't know if like you guys have thoughts on that. Do you think now front offices are kind of seeing like it's either championship or now, or what type of mentality do you guys think these front offices are going through right now?
Yeah, it's tough when you see like other franchises, like even like Milwaukee or Brooklyn or whatever, and they put together these teams really quickly that are all of a sudden like contenders. I mean, obviously you have your big market teams like the Lakers and Clippers. They kind of have the ability to do that whenever they want, just based on that, them being in Los Angeles and big markets and stuff. But, it's tough. I definitely think the firing was fishy. I feel like we're like a year from now, we're going to find out something that just hasn't been revealed yet. Somebody's keeping it a secret, because it does seem weird. They signed him to an extension. They played really well in the bubble up until the playoffs, and then ran into what turned out to be, the Eastern Conference finals. Yeah, it turned out to be the Eastern Conference representative in the finals. So it's interesting. But I mean, even back to the point on Sabonis, I mean, he's got room to grow. Him and Turner are only 24. I don't know LeVert's age, but I know he's also in that range as well. So to have three guys like that, and you have TJ Warren, who's 27, 28 years old, to have like those like three or four guys right there with that skill level, it's nice. And it's kind of like the reality too that we don't think about. Like there's only like 3 to 5 teams a year that are seriously in contention, and that's just how it works. Teams like in the Pacers spot will probably want to talk themselves into being in contention, and that's fine. If that's what you need to like motivate you as a chip on your shoulder, go for it. But at the end of the day, sometimes the players you have are going to be really, really good, but not exceptional. But we'll see. It's still very early. I mean, for Sabonis to be 24 years old, putting up 21, 13, 6 a game, that's pretty phenomenal. And like I said, his growth has been. I mean, he's fantastic. He's the Pacers are kind of one of those teams I want to watch on TV every night, even if they're not playing like the Lakers or Clippers. Like I'll just try to throw them on and just watch them play for a little bit. So like I said, it'll be interesting to see. They're very in flux right now with the injuries. We kind of forgot that Warren's out. Like it's been all of this stuff, but like Warren is also a 20-point a game score for them as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But I hope the best for them. And except that they're going to be, no matter who they play in the playoffs, I think they're going to be an extremely difficult ally. Philly, or it could be Philly. Like they match up well enough with every team in terms of the ability to play hard and their scoring. So it'll be fun to see what they can do.
Yeah, no, definitely. Another key piece that we want to touch on that's missing a little bit of time here is Jusuf Nurkic with the fracture there in Portland. I believe he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks right now is the timetable, if I'm not mistaken. We've seen Nurkic miss, a bit of time, and this is obviously not as severe as the leg injury that kept him out for most of last season. But I think if we learned anything from last season, it's that Jusuf Nurkic is a key piece for that Portland team based on how much they struggled last year without him, even behind Dame crazy season, they were still, just fighting to get into the playoffs, really scraping at that 8th seed. And when Nurkic came back, they looked like a completely different team there in the bubble. They looked much better. He's sort of the defensive anchor of that team. If you're relying on Dame and CJ McCollum to do all the scoring, you need somebody to sort of back them up on the defensive end, and that's really what Nurkic has been. And I know 6 to 8 weeks, compared to his previous injury, is not nearly as devastating. But Portland's playing well right now, and I could see this, in a competitive Western Conference, maybe dropping them back in the standings to the point where they are back in that sort of fighting for the 8th seed. Jordan, I'll toss it to you first here. What do you think about this injury?
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be really tough. Everything you said on Nurkic is spot on in terms of what he brings defensively. And it's just, he's Dame and CJ by all accounts, and their coaching staff seem to love Nurkic. He's just a very likable guy amongst that team. He does all the dirty work. He sticks up for his guards. If they're getting pushed around and stuff like that, he's always in the middle, kind of helping them out as their big brother. So that's definitely going to hurt for them. And also the CJ McCollum thing stinks too. I don't think it's as long of a length of time he's going to miss as Nurkic, but it still could be 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. And, he's playing the best basketball of his career, 27, 6, and 5 a game, and leading the league in threes by a wide margin. So it's a tough blow for Portland to lose 2 of their guys like this in a week span. And I think you're right, even though they're not season-ending injuries, the West is so tough and competitive every night. And, the East has also been, competitive as well. You've seen even like the lower tier teams, even the Knicks, the Cavs and stuff like they are playing competitive basketball every night. So if, to go through that schedule without your second and third best players essentially is going to be really difficult. Obviously all eyes shift to Dame. We know what he's done in the past. We know he's gone on these epic, 2 to 3 week, bursts where he scores, 40 points a game and just, kind of takes over. But I wonder if not having CJ and Nurkic is going to prove to be a little bit too tall of a task for him. He is only, one man. He's only like a 6'2" guard. So it doesn't, limit what he can do in terms of taking over the whole game. So I think it's gonna really hurt them. I think they could fall back, and they're gonna be playing catch up here in that second half of the season.
Yeah, and that's really the last thing that you want in the Western Conference is to be playing catch up. Henry, I'll toss it to you next. How do you see this Nurkic injury impacting Portland?
I think pretty bad because now, let's not forget, CJ's out too with a fractured left foot. So the Blazers they're one of those teams that I think Don put it best earlier that are kind of running in place. That they're not bad enough to get a lottery pick, and they're not good enough, to make that type of noise in the West. But they have Damian Lillard. Thankfully, they have a franchise player that can carry a team by himself, but he can only do so much, and that's been proven, in the playoffs and in other seasons. So it's going to be tough. Yusuf Nurkic has really shown to be, an essential, vital player for their offense, for their defense, and everything. And having Enes Kanter as his backup. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying his ceiling is super, super limited. So
former Celtics great.
Former Celtics great. You know what? And it's going to be hard to see, Dame trying to carry this team again solely by himself. I know Carmelo's on the team, but he doesn't do much carrying at all in this stage of his career. But if Carmelo can step it up in the absence of CJ and Yusuf Nurkic, then obviously that's going to be a plus for the Blazers. But what are the odds of that? What are the odds of Carmelo Anthony scoring 20-plus points a game in, let's say, an 8-10 game span? I don't know. What do you guys think? There's a good possibility that the Blazers might look to him, to be a little bit more ball dominant.
Yeah, what you got, Dom? I want to ask you about that, but I also want to ask you about that question that just popped up. What is Portland's next move here if somebody like Melo really can't step up and fill that gap? Right.
So the thing that really sucks about the Trailblazers is that they've kind of been snake bitten these past couple years. The thing that really I think that hurts, not necessarily more than Nurkic, but the thing that really kind of compiles with this injury is the fact that they still don't have Zach Collins. And I'm a big fan of Zach Collins. I think Zach Collins is a really good player. I think he's a good big man. And I want to see, because we really haven't seen Zach Collins and Yusuf Nurkic play together, which is what I feel like they kind of want, or at least to have Zach Collins kind of stagger their minutes and give Nurkic a little bit of a reprieve. I like Zach Collins a lot, but I think it is rough. I think that as far as losing Nurkic and where they move, obviously Enes Kanter is going to have to step up, and he's good offensively. Enes Kanter's problem has always been defensively. He's a defensive liability. I definitely think you're going to look to Melo just to take a little bit of the pressure off of Dame, because obviously with CJ out, with Nurkic out, like a lot of that is going to be like, all right, Dame, it's time for you to carry the team, which he absolutely can do. Dame is one of the best players in the league. But I definitely think you're going to lean on Melo. You may see Melo start to get a little bit more of his ISO situations where, you know, he just kind of does what Melo does. But you're going to see them start looking to people like, you know, Enes Kanter and Robert Covington maybe to kind of fill some of that big man position. Maybe we'll even see a little bit more of Harry Giles. Who knows? But Portland has a lot to figure out. I think that Portland can, when this team is healthy, I think they can be one of the best teams in the Western Conference. The problem for Portland has strictly been health. So we have to see what happens there. But as far as this whole thing right now, I think CJ McCollum will be back soon, which I think is going to be a huge bonus. I think that'll give a little bit of a reprieve for Damian Lillard. But Nurkic needs to get healthy. If they can get Zach Collins back soon, obviously he got injured in the bubble last year and hasn't made his debut yet this season. As far as the next move for Portland, between Nurkic and CJ, it's going to be, I mean, I have to believe you keep CJ. If it comes down to which one do we keep, I have to believe you keep CJ. Just because I don't think you want to break up that backcourt, because as of right now, that's the best backcourt in the league. Unless we haven't seen James Harden and Kyrie Irving play yet. So they've got some things to work out. But I think mainly right now, the big focus for Portland should be getting healthy. Get healthy, and then we'll see what type of noise you can make, because we haven't seen Portland be healthy for really 2.5 years now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Does anybody know the timetable on Zach Collins returning? Because I actually don't know it off the top of my head. I don't know if you have it. No, I don't even know if we've even been given a timetable, because I know he had just coming back from injury last season too, and then he got hurt again. So
yeah,
it's just
he had a really bad shoulder injury where he missed most of the season, came back, and then had a really bad ankle injury. So he had a surgery that ended his season. I don't believe we've been even given a timetable for when his return is.
Okay. Yeah, I hope Portland
Hear
can
me
get
out.
it. Yeah, what's
Hear
up?
me out. Schroeder, Harrell, Dudley, Giannis's brother, and a first-round pick for Dame.
Giannis's brother.
Give him the depth, and we'll take Dame off their hands. That way, you know, he can get to a championship contender.
Could Portland package CJ McCollum and like trying to push for Bradley Beal? Because we've heard Bradley Beal's name, and I know Wizards are still kind of figuring things out with Russell and Beal and whatnot, but Bradley Beal's name has been in trade talks forever, and I feel like the Wizards are struggling right now. I feel like Beal's not going to want to stick around there. Could we maybe see CJ packaged in a deal like that? Because I feel like CJ is the only asset that Portland could move to get a player of Beal's caliber to take them to the next step.
All right, hear me out. Schroeder, Harrell, and Dudley.
Jordan was gonna find a way to get the Lakers.
I was listening to something the other day, and I think it's really interesting. And Raj, you'll like this since you and your brother are Nuggets fans. They keep talking about like if Denver keeps kind of hovering around that middle of the road and they can't get it together, if they package like Porter Jr. and some other pieces for Beal. Because Murray's not shown that he can continue. I think Murray is. What's my other analogy? Murray's like that girl in high school that just teases everybody, like, "Hey, let's hang out Friday," and then like you hang out once, and it's amazing, and you're like, "Okay, like let's hang out next week." She's like, "Yeah," and then like you just like never hear from her. That's what Murray does like every year. He gets hot for like 2 weeks, and he had an incredible playoff run there. And it's like now we're back to like 19 points a game. I see some nights where he's like 5 of 14. I'm just like, what? Like,
did you guys see that video of Jason Tatum talking about guys in the bubble playing better than they usually were? And he was like very like what the hell about that?
Yeah, I've never seen you play like this.
Who do you think he was talking about? I think he was probably talking about Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray, yeah. Well, because Jamal Murray, he earned that contract. Yeah, he earned that contract, and then he just sort of disappeared for most of last season. Towards the beginning of the season, he was averaging like 13 points a game or something like that. And then he slowly sort of increasing the playoffs, just exploded basically. But Denver's been in trade talks for Beal and Drew Holiday for the longest time. I know, right? Jordan's gonna get us taken off the air if Joe's still in the conversation. Keep talking about
just my analogies are slam dunks.
I would love to see Beal go to Denver. Obviously, yeah, being sort of in a Denver bubble with my brother being a big Denver fan. But I don't know if that's gonna happen.
To your main point, though, Raj, like all analogies aside, I have thought that as much as I love watching Dame and CJ together. Like watching them take over a game is like a really fun experience. However, I've thought that because of both of their lack of defensive abilities and the fact that they've always had to have Nurkic and these other guys, and even dating back to like Mo Harkless and Mino and those guys having to kind of cover for them.
Yeah,
I think that it's better suited in the end to make some sort of package with CJ. Dame's obviously top 12 player in this league. You have to keep him. And CJ's, I mean, hopefully when he comes back, he continues to play very strong basketball because right now his trade value has never been higher.
Yeah.
With the scoring that he's doing and the playmaking as well. So I think if they could package, ideally you'd want Portland to get, a 2-guard that's serviceable. But if they could land like a wing, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying Bradley Beal's like a true wing because his defense sucks probably more than most players. But if they could find somebody, just maybe you're not going to get $1 for $1 in the trade, but if you can get like a serviceable 2-guard and then decent scoring, wing player that can also play defense, like just something to kind of bolster their depth and also maintain that scoring. I don't know, what that trade would look like.
Oladipo would have been a good piece there.
Huh?
Oladipo would have been a good piece there.
Yeah, if
kind of fits the bill for what you're saying.
If you could have gotten him to like commit to like an extension or something, that would have been nice. But yeah, I definitely think they do have to make a move because it's they kind of run into those problems every year in the playoffs. Besides the injury bug, which is definitely true, they run into like they can't guard. I mean, they play the Warriors and Steph just has a field day, and they play these other good guards in the conference, and they just have nobody to stop them. So they definitely need some sort of shakeup.
Steph abuses the Trailblazers every time, and I don't know why. Like, I feel like every time Steph drops 50, it's against the Trailblazers. Like, pretty much. Also, Jordan, I'm pretty sure Damian Lillard has a no trade clause. He's not going anywhere.
Oh no, I would not trade him. Oh, you mean for like my Lakers trade?
Oh yeah. I also think Dame is.
You think he wouldn't? He is different, but you tell me
he's committed. I think he really loves being in a small market, and I think he is one of those old school players where I don't want to play with the best players. I want to beat them.
I do. He is, and I do love that about him. He's been very vocal his entire career about like not.
Yeah, he wants to stay in Portland.
Plus, come on, he'd be what, the 4th option behind LeBron, AD, and Caruso? Like, come on, that's.
You guys remember back at the beginning of Dame's career when he was getting snub after snub after snub, whether it be All NBA or All Star, everything. Yep. He was just out there talking, and now he's sort of lived up to all that stuff that he put out there because he's definitely. I think he's top 10 in the league, definitely. So you got something, Henry?
Yeah, just real quick. I was thinking about it right now and talking about, a trade package from Portland, for Bradley Beal, including CJ McCollum in that. CJ McCollum or Bradley Beal, if you think about it, they're kind of the same player.
They're similar.
Pretty similar. Not even similar. Like very, very similar. So you'd be trading CJ McCollum for CJ MCollum 2.0.
CJ McCollum with a few more points though. You get a little extra scoring out of it.
But the only reason put CJ McCollum on the Wizards, and I guarantee you his usage rating is going to skyrocket. So that's the difference. I'm like, if he goes plays alongside Damian Lillard, how much more can he do? Because his usage rating is going to go down. Obviously, his points per game is going to go down with Damian Lillard at the helm. So I don't think that would be the best move for the Portland Trailblazers. What do you guys think? Or am I, kind of like,
Peyton Pritchard for CJ in the first round.
All right, we're gonna go.
I agree with that, Henry. I don't think Beal should be the move. I think they need a wing, right? They really need a wing who can really cover up for that backcourt and their lack of defense. And I just don't know if any of the great wings who are two-way players, like the Kawhis, like the Paul Georges and stuff like that, those guys just aren't available, right? Like the Clippers aren't going to give up either one of those. Obviously, LeBron's in LA, KD's in Brooklyn, and all of those guys are staying. Giannis is in Milwaukee. Like, you're just not going to get one of those guys on the market right now. And unless you draft someone, like, you're going to have to get lucky in a draft. Like, they're in a rough spot. Like I said,
and they needed a wing. Like, even going back to like the last 6-7 years where they've had Amino and Harkless and those guys, like, they're serviceable. Don't get me wrong, and those guys are better defensively than Melo. But offensively, they were limited. It was like, man, they're relegated to spot up threes, and they really weren't even always hitting those. So they've kind of had a problem at the wing probably since whenever Batum's last good year with Portland was, which was like 7-8 years ago before he tanked it.
I would say they picked up Melo like 2 years too late.
Yeah. Well, you would think that Rocco would kind of fit the bill because he is that 3-and-D guy that should thrive there, and he's been fine. But like, I guess he's just kind of also at his ceiling where he's not really going to get any better. Yeah,
that's what you say about it. Like, okay, he had he'll give you 12 points. he'll make like 2 out of every 6 threes, and everyone's
like
25-point night, and you'll be like, this is the Rocco we want. I think it's kind of the same problem Philly had with him. They were so frustrated by his inconsistency, so it's tough.
Which wing is on the market? Kevin Porter Jr. How's that for a transition? As Jordan might put it, more food drama out there in Cleveland. We'll get through this real quick. We'll get through this real quickly. But Kevin Porter Jr. is apparently either going to be released or trying to be traded because he was upset that the Cavs gave Taurean Prince his locker, so he threw food at people in the locker room. And this is just one of those weird stories that comes out of Cleveland. Obviously, with the J.R. Smith story a few years back where he was throwing soup at Damon Jones or whatever was going on over there. Just one of these weird situations, and it sucks because Kevin Porter, before this season, between like Sexton, Garland, and Kevin Porter Jr., as a Cavs fan, I would have said keep Kevin Porter Jr. Then he had the whole issue with the gun situation before the season started. He'd been off for personal reasons every single game. He hadn't played, finally showed up on the sidelines for the past couple games and was with the team, was ready to come back. And then this thing happens. And as a fan of this team that was really, really sold on the promise that he had shown for these guys, especially on the offensive end, this guy was really, really good last year in his rookie season. It's depressing. It's really depressing to see that that he's getting, this is the reason that he's probably going to be ousted from Cleveland. And I hope that they don't just release him. I understand that, he might be a bit of a liability. Teams might not want to trade for him, but I feel like he's got a little bit of value because he did show promise last year. He does come with some baggage, so you're not going to get as much as you would have gotten if you had traded him like midway through last season. But I feel like there's definitely something there. And if you package him, obviously JaVale McGee's been sort of on the trade block as well. If you can package him with JaVale, who's been playing well this year, because Jared Allen is probably going to be the number 2 center behind Drummond, I could see maybe a valuable asset coming back to Cleveland, but I just don't like that. I would have rather kept JaVale and Kevin Porter Jr. at the end of the day. And now that both those guys are on the trading block, I'm kind of upset. Jordan, what you got on?
Yeah, I'm gonna. That's where the Cavs are at right now. Raj is excited about you'd rather keep Kevin Porter Jr. and JaVale McGee. Cavs 2021, folks. My second joke before I get into my serious answer is CJ McCollum for Kevin Porter Jr. and JaVale.
Yes. I say yes.
Portland probably blocks Cleveland's number at that point. No, I mean
it's not already blocked.
It's obviously a weird situation, and just obviously a typical young player showing a lack of maturity. I mean, if it was really that big of a deal to have your locker in a certain spot, like you got to be able to swallow your pride. It's just a locker, like. You're only going to be in it for a couple of years anyway. So, I agree with you, though, the fact that they should try and trade him. I think there's always teams that are going to bite, especially on someone who has shown flashes of potential like he has. So, I think you dangle him out there, you see what the prospects are, and then you just say, hey, look, you got to take Porter Jr. and JaVale because we joke about them having like a logjam at center, but like they really have like too many centers. Like
4 7-footers on that team.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like illegal to have over a certain combined height. The Cavs are way over it. So
they're grabbing all the rebounds though.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I've said it like 3 shows around, like no one's going to out rebound Drummond and Allen.
Who's the most undersized team in the league right now?
Definitely not Cleveland.
Yeah.
I don't know, but they just
Maybe Boston.
Just
no,
try.
I think it is Boston. Yeah,
there's like I said, he's shown flashes of potential. I'm sure they could find somebody out there. They're going to probably get 50 cents on the dollar because this gives them a ton. Gives other teams a ton of leverage when they negotiate these kind of deals. But if you can get something for him, it's always better than nothing.
Yeah, Henry, what you got on this? Do you want him? You want those 2 guys there in Boston?
No, I'm good. I like our little undersized team. So you guys can keep him, but no, it's just my thoughts are. I hope Kevin Porter Jr. I understand him in kind of just a more personal level. I'm not saying when I was in the league, blah blah blah, nothing like that. But it's more like it's like if you do see yourself as part of the growing core of a franchise, and then you see your locker replaced by a name who is barely relevant in the league. The most relevant memory I have of Taurean Prince was him getting blocked by LeBron back.
I knew you were gonna go to that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was I was like, who just got blocked so bad that now I know his name. That's Taurean Prince to me, at least. But I understand the frustration in that, especially because he's so young in his career. So he's just finally probably hit that. He probably hit that spot. Like, I kind of have a home now, like have the right guys around me. I have my dilemmas off the court with the guns and everything, but Gilbert Arenas did it too. All right. And he's like one of the most beloved players. He got paid. So it's just like, he was looking for that opportunity to like finally implement himself, his full potential into the franchise. And to just see that, like, if it were like a more worthy player, then I would say be like, oh, come on, they're kind of replacing you with a better guy. But I think Kevin Porter Jr. has a lot more promise than Taurean Prince. So I understand his frustration, but at the end of the day, a lot of the players say, at the end of the day, this league is a business, They're just going to run as a business. But hopefully your Cavs, Raj, they find like, a nice middle ground, or else they're just going to self-implode like they usually do.
We could have gotten over that 500 hump again because we had 2 games against the Wizards, but they both got postponed because the Wizards don't know how to keep COVID under control in their locker room.
Yep.
But,
and then that's a whole nother problem going on right now too.
Dom, why don't you close us out here with Kevin Porter Jr.?
It's rough. Like I hate seeing situations like this because, and David Fisdale kind of talked about it, like Kevin Porter Jr. is one of those guys who comes from a really rough neighborhood, had a really rough upbringing, things like that. And you kind of see certain situations like that with guys that come from tough neighborhoods because they're kind of always on the self-defense and they're always on high alert. They kind of are sensitive and they have these moments where they have these outbursts because that's just kind of what they've had to do to survive because of where they come from. And it sucks because when you look at Kevin Porter Jr. just from a talent standpoint, it's like he clearly belongs in the NBA. Like Kevin Porter is a good player. And it's like you've done so much to get out of the situation that you were in. And now you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to end up right back there because, like I said, we've seen the weapon charges. He was suspended for a game for making contact with a referee. Like, obviously he's been missing time this whole season, and literally the first time you come back, you have this outburst because of a locker. Like, I understand if you're probably like, dude, I was a first round pick, like, show me a little bit more respect. But I get that, but it's like, come on, dude, like, it's just a locker at the end of the day. Also, to the J.R. Smith thing. J.R. Smith threw chicken tortilla soup at somebody. You know how good
deadly right there.
You know how mad you have to be to throw that soup at somebody? Like, it's not like tomato soup. Like, chicken tortilla soup is awesome. But I really hope Kevin Porter Jr. can get it together. Like, because for him, it's all up here. It's mental. It's mental for him. He has the physical wise and just talent wise, he belongs in the league. Mm-hmm. It's just he has to really do some self-evaluation. I think he has kind of put the Cavs in a tough spot because yes, he has the talent, but a lot of teams are going to look at it as, why should we trade for him when he's probably a huge liability and we would have to give up pieces to get him when if no one bites, the Cavs are just going to waive him. Like they've basically came out and said like he's not a part of the team anymore. Like they've let that be known to the rest of the players on the team. Like Kevin Porter Jr. is not going to be a part of the team, whether we trade him or waive him. So I don't think the Cavs are really going to have an option to trade him because I just think that Kevin Porter Jr. has put himself in a situation where like no one's going to give up assets to take that sort of liability. They're going to get him after the waiver wire and things like that. So like I said, I just hope he can get it together. I just hope whatever it is he needs to go through, whatever, if it's therapy that you got to go, whatever you need to do, get it, because you belong in this league. You're a good player. Now it's just about being a good person.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day is, it is this bigger than basketball thing. It is going to suck for the Cavs to lose a key asset, a young guy who does have the talent, like you're saying, to be a true star in this league.
The Cavs traded up to get him. They traded up to get him in the first round.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you hope he gets it right, and you hope that he ends up in the right place wherever, 1 year, 2 years, however long it takes for him to get there. You do hope he does get there at the end of the day. But that'll bring us to a close for this episode. Thank you to everybody for joining us. You know where to find the three of us. You know where to find NBS on Bonfire for merch. But Dom, let people know where you're showing up on a few shows this week. Let people know where they can find you throughout.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I'm Dom the Sports Guy. That's my Twitter handle. You can catch me there. I also have my own podcast that I do. Going to be making a show for it soon. It's called Instant Replay. It's on all streaming platforms. I will be, as I've been on today, later tonight, I'm actually going to be on No Huddle with Jeff Barnes. And then tomorrow I will be on Moving the Chains with Jordan and Ashmere. So a lot of stuff. I'm pretty busy.
And Raj can't do more than one show a week. Get out of here.
I'm not allowed to be on No Huddle anyways because I'm not allowed to talk about the NFL in public. But that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, thanks again, Dom, for joining us. If you want to close things, I just want to close things out with again that best comment of the entire day, right there.
I'm gonna remember that.